want to talk about St. Gregory the Great for just a minute. His name, Gregory, is where we get Gregorian chant from. He reformed the liturgy. He did a tremendous amount of work organizing the church during the time of the fall of the Roman Empire. So he goes all the way back to the 6th century, really. That's when St. Gregory the Great lived. And he was a monk, lived in a monastery, and he reflects on his life in the monastery, and he says, during my time in the monastery, I could be recollected and I could pray well, reasonably well. He says, but now that I'm the Pope, I have to put up with all of these worldly people all the time, and I have to engage in all of these conversations, and I have all of these concerns. And he laments the fact that he is not praying as well, and that he engages himself in worldly affairs, and he finds himself, just being entertained by trivial things that once upon a time he would have not put up with, not had to put up with, but that was his life. And there's another reflection I was reading about the contrast between, say, a bishop and a father. Okay, a bishop who has care of his diocese, and a father who has care of his home and his children. And the man who has care of his home and his children, he can't spend all day and night in church and prayer. Okay, he has to take care of his home and his children. And the bishop can't spend all of his time out, away from his diocese, and spending time and evenings every night here and there in the next place out on the town. That's not his life. So we have different life, different circumstances, different times. And so Gregory the Great struggled with the different dimensions of being the Pope as opposed to being a monk. And so we can have those same challenges in our lives, can't we? But we hear St. Paul say to us, For who has known the mind of the Lord, so as to counsel him? But we, and he's speaking about you and me who have been baptized, this is a great compliment to you, he says, but we have the mind of Christ. You ever think that you have the mind of Christ? And again, maybe to think to ourselves, well, I wish I understood the mind of Christ better than I do. And I think that's a legitimate and humble prayer. I wish I understood the mind of Christ better than I do. But at the same time, when we hear St. Paul, again, remembering St. Paul's audience in his letter to the Corinthians, these are people who are beginning to kind of, look down on Paul a little because he doesn't talk in the same way as the Greek philosophers. And Paul is saying, we have a wisdom that transcends your philosophy. We have the wisdom of God. And there is the wisdom of the world, and there is the wisdom of God. And the wisdom of God is greater. And it is exemplified, we talked about this yesterday. What exemplifies the wisdom of God? What was it? You remember? You should remember. You should have the mind of Christ. You should remember from one day. It was the cross. The cross. Oh yeah, Father, the cross. The cross exemplifies the mind of Christ. So we recognize that the cross doesn't make sense to the world. I was thinking about this whole thing, and what are, just think for a second about your greatest priority. What is your top goal? What is the number one thing that you want to pursue with your life? And if we have the mind of Christ, it's got to be sanctity. It's got to be holiness. It's got to be the wisdom that transcends the world. And so let us put on the mind of Christ. And yes, we will have to deal with worldly things. We don't live in a monastery. We will deal with worldly things. And we strive to not let them drag us down. But who has known the mind of the Lord so as to counsel him? But we have the mind of Christ.